Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order on November the 11th, Remembrance Day. And I'll just go over this first. Today's meeting is being live streamed and recorded on the Township of Muskoka Lakes website and YouTube channel. By participating in the open public meeting today, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded and posted online. And just one other note, that approximately 10:30, we will be taking a recess so we can go over to the cenotaph for the service for Remembrance Day and resume right afterwards. Thank you. So the first is the adoption of the agenda. Moved by Member Brown, second by Member Grogan Green, being resolved that Committee of Adjustment agenda dated November 11th, 2024 be adopted. All those in favor? That's carried. Are there any declarations of interest?
Excuse me. I will recuse myself from file E 6124.
Okay.
As I have in previous meetings.
Okay, and then moved by Member Stokes, second by Member Bridgman, be it resolved that Committee Adjustment minutes dated October 15, 2024 be adopted and approved as circulated. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That's carried. Now, would you like to? Please.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. It is required that I make a few statements, then I will explain the hearing procedures. This electronic hearing is being held in accordance with Section 238 of the Municipal Act. The members of the Committee of Adjustment present are Alan Edwards, Barb Bridgman, Ruthanne Brown, Lisa Grogan Green, and Sean Stokes. I can confirm we have quorum and that senior staff and planning staff are present. Public input on this November 11th agenda was invited at the following email address, planning@muskokalakes.ca. Now I will explain the hearing process. The planner will provide an explanation and purpose of the application, the date the notice was circulated, and planning staff's comments. All internal and external submissions have been provided to committee members by Friday, November 8th. The planner will present any submissions received after this date. The committee will hear from the applicant or the applicant's agent if they wish to add any information or to substantiate their proposal. Please provide your name, mailing address, and postal code for our records. The committee will hear from those in support of the application and those in opposition to the application. Again, please provide your name, mailing address, and postal code for our records. Presentations are limited to 5 minutes unless otherwise permitted by the committee. If you are here to speak on an application electronically, please wait until the planner presents the relevant application to raise your hand in Zoom. If you are here to speak on an application in person, when asked, please raise your hand, and when you are recognized by the chair, please approach the podium, turn on the microphone, and remain at the podium while you state your comments for recording purposes. The committee will hear from the applicant or the applicant's agent to respond to any questions or concerns raised. The committee will then have the opportunity to ask questions, have a debate on the application, and make a decision based on the information presented at the hearing. Please note that the effect of written and oral submissions on decisions for consent and minor variances, along with the reasons for minor variance decisions, are both required under the Planning Act, and motions are pre-populated with standard wording. However, the committee may decide to add reasons and/or effects to the standard wording after voting on the decision. Motions have been pre-populated with random movers and seconders to expedite the meeting and are automatically written in the positive to assist in completing decisions as opposed to writing out each resolution. This does not in any way mean an application is going to be approved. When it is time to vote, members shall physically raise their hand until the chair has confirmed the vote. If the vote is unclear, a verbal vote shall be recorded. This is not considered a recorded vote. It must be noted the chair has a vote on each application and can participate in the discussion. There is a 20-day appeal period from the date of the decision. Building permits are not available until after the appeal period and if no appeals are received. Lastly, please take down the pink notice signs that were posted on your property to advertise today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ford. And the first application is P 4024 ML and A 7924, and that's Leonard. And that is Ms. Beamish.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. The first applications to be heard are concurrent consent application B 4024 ML and minor variance application A 7924 in the name of Leonard. The subject lands are known municipally as 1040 Strachan Point Road. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted consent and minor variance sketches on page 42 of the agenda package. Please note that the agent for the application has provided updated sketches showing the correct configuration of the dock on the retained lot. These sketches were circulated to committee. The purpose and effect of consent application B 4024 ML is to sever a portion of the retained lot and add it to a separate lot to the south, the benefiting lot. Minor variance application A 7924 has been submitted concurrently with consent application to recognize the resultant lot coverage on the retained lot. Notice of this public meeting under the Planning Act was circulated 20 days in advance of this meeting, and 5 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Nick Snyder, the township's chief building official, Matthew Irving, the township septic inspector, and staff from the district municipality of Muskoka, all stating no objection to the application. Comments were also received from Douglas Holland, the township's fire prevention officer, providing fire response times and recommending that the property owners review the Fire Smart Homeowners Manual to understand how treatments to the property influence wildfire spread. After the circulation of comments to committee, comments were received from staff at Hydro One stating no objection to the application, and further comments were received from Tim Sopko, the township's manager of public works, stating that Strachan Point is a seasonally maintained township road. And it appears that the township does not own property at this location, nor is there a dedicated road allowance for this portion of Strachan Point Road. It is recommended that as a condition of approval, the applicant is required to convey property to the township for the purposes of the road of a road allowance. The property conveyed shall be 66 feet wide and centered upon the center line of the existing road. Any encroachments on the property that is conveyed to the township must be removed and or relocated to the applicant's property and at the expense of the applicants. Severance approval should also be subject to confirmation by the Operational Services Department of the availability of an entrance permit for the severed lot. The proposed variance is summarized as shown on the screen. This table was included in the circulation materials and can be found in the agenda package. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended that consent application B 4024 ML Leonard and minor variance application A 7924 Leonard be adjourned to provide further time for township staff to address and evaluate the impacts of the request for a 66-foot road allowance on the subject lands. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee.
Thank you very much, Ms. Beamish. Is the applicant or applicant's agent here wish to speak on this?
Sorry to interrupt Chair Edwards and Miss Ledger, but the mic doesn't seem to be on.
That's what I was going to say. Can we get a short version of what you talked about, Terry? tape. And I remembered to turn it on for the first time ever. I know. The short version is there are issues with the road, and I just would like some consideration. I was just relaying information mostly for staff. I think that if that does happen, I also would like to know if it comes back to this committee, because the lot coverage at the best would be 11 and a half, and I suspect that would be more of a zoning bylaw amendment. So just a few questions. But if you're not considering the road, then we're fine with the conditions and the application as it is. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in support of this application? Yes.
Good morning. I hope everybody can hear me.
Yes.
Good morning. My name is Oded Hubert. I'm a co-owner with my wife, who's also on this call, of the benefiting lot. And I want to thank the committee for hearing this. The issue of the road does raise an interesting question that, as a layman, I just wanted to put on the record with the committee and ask if there are any comments about it. If the road is taken over by the township, this would cause a natural delineation between the two properties. And you will note on the application, there is a cutout into the lot that is being severed that was actually formed to give the property coverage requirement as Ms. Ledger arranged. But we would like to avoid having to have that cutout if the township actually takes over the road. Is that clear?
Yes, it is, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And I'm sure, and that Ms. Ledger can look after it with staff in the future. Oh, I'm sorry, we need your name and address.
Oh, my apologies. My apologies. My name is Oded Hubert. I spell my first name O-D-E-D. The last name is H-U-B-E-R-T. And my permanent address is 121 Coldstream Avenue, C-O-L-D-S-T-R-E-A-M, in Toronto, M5N 1X7.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank
Is
you.
there anyone else wishing to speak in support of this application? Or anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Being the application was asked to be deferred, is this in agreement with the committee? Yes, okay, so we'll defer that one. Thank you. And the next one is B 4124, and that's Wise, and that is Ms. DeMello.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. The next application to be heard is consent application B 4124 ML in the name of Wise. The retained lot is municipally known as 2755 Muskoka Road 118 West, unit number 36. I would direct committee's attention to the consent sketch on page 57 of the agenda package. The purpose and effect of the application is to sever a portion of property and to add it to an abutting property to the west. The purpose of the application is to correct an encroachment of an existing one-story dwelling. No new lots are being created. Notice of this public hearing under the Planning Act was circulated 18 days in advance of this meeting, and 3 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Nick Snyder, the township's chief building official, and Nick Colucci, director of operational services, stating no objection to the application. Comments were also received from Doug Holland, the township's fire prevention officer, stating the calculated fire response time and that the Fire Smart Homeowners Manual should be consulted to understand how treatments to the property influence wildfire spread. Comments were also received from Hydro One, stating no objection. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended that the application be approved subject to the standard conditions of consent. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mello. Is the applicant or applicant's agent here wish to speak on this?
Good morning again. Terry Ledger, agent for the applicant, 167 Medora Street, P0B1J0. Recent survey showed some encroachment on the neighboring property. These are family members, so we're just here to rectify the issue. Thank you. I'm here for any questions.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in support of this application? Anyone in opposition? Questions from the members? No. Moved by member Stokes, second by member Brown, be it resolved that consent be granted per application B 4124 ML Wise, provided following conditions are fulfilled. 1, a satisfactory registrable description deed of the separate lot, together with any required rights of way or easements, be submitted to the township, along with a registered copy of the reference plan. 2, that a legal undertaking be submitted by the acting solicitor which confirms that the separate lot will merge in title with the benefiting lot upon registration of the transfer / deeds, which may include canceling consent if necessary. 3, that subsection 3 of section 50 of the Planning Act applies to any subsequent conveyance. And 4, that confirmation be received that the township is satisfied with the resultant lots are satisfactory for on-site sewage disposal, that any problems identified with any existing sewage system be corrected to the satisfaction of the township. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? That's carried. And the next application is A 7624. And that is Ms. DeMello.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. The next application to be heard is minor variance application A-7624 in the name of DIANI. Subject lands are municipally known as 8216 Lake Joseph Road, Unit 10. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted site plan on page 76 of the agenda package. The purpose of the application is to construct a 2-story boathouse and attached dock. Notice of this public hearing under the Planning Act was circulated 13 days in advance of this meeting, and 3 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Nick Colucci, the township's manager of public works, who stated his objection, noting that 75% of the natural shoreline be maintained. Staff note that the report recommends a condition that the applicant submit a site plan application to revegetate the shoreline buffer should the recommended variance be approved. Nick Snyder, the township's chief building official, stated no objection to the application. Comments were also received from Douglas Holland, the township's fire prevention officer, noting the calculated fire response time and recommending that the Fire Smart Homeowner Manual be consulted to understand how treatments to the property influence wildfire spread. The proposed variances are summarized as shown on the screen. This table was included in the circulation materials and can be found in the agenda package. A site-specific zoning bylaw amendment was approved for the subject property in 2021. Variance C requests relief from subsection 2 of the site-specific bylaw, and Schedule 2 shows the permitted location and extent of the proposed two-story boathouse as shown on the slide. The applicant is proposing a boathouse with an expanded first-story width of 53 feet, which deviates from the first-story width as shown on Schedule 2 of the site-specific bylaw, which is 49 feet and 10 inches. The width of the first story of the boathouse is also the subject of Variance A, whereby the zoning bylaw permits a maximum width of 49.9 feet. The applicant is proposing a width of 53 feet. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration. Staff's initial recommendation was that Variance B be approved, subject to a condition requiring the submission of a site plan agreement to revegetate the shoreline and refusal of Variances A and C. However, after further discussions with the applicant, they are now proposing to revise the proposal to bring it further into compliance with the site-specific bylaw and comprehensive zoning bylaw. By reducing the first-story width of the boathouse, they're requesting that the application be adjourned, and planning staff agree with this request and recommend that the application be adjourned to allow us time to review the revised proposal and provide a recommendation to committee based on the revised proposal. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee.
Thank you very much. And is the applicant's agent here wishing to speak on this?
Good morning, Chair and Committee. As planning staff have mentioned, that we would like to just adjourn this till hopefully next month to bring the proposal closer into conformance.
Okay, your name, address.
Jack Lorenz, Daconin Group, 3 Armstrong Point Road, Port Carling, Ontario, P0B1J0.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in support or opposition to this application? No? Okay, I'll ask the committee adjourn this. Yes, okay, that's adjourned. Next application is A7724 James and Langley, and that's Ms. Beamish.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. The next application to be heard is minor variance application A7724 in the name of James and Langley. The subject lands are known municipally as 1197 Hamills Point Road. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted site plan on page 105 of the agenda package. The purpose of the application is to construct a 2-story sleeping cabin. Notice of this public hearing under the Planning Act was circulated 12 days in advance of this meeting, and 5 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Nick Snyder, the township's chief building official, stating no objection to the application. Comments were also received from Douglas Holland, the township's fire prevention officer, noting the calculated fire response time and recommending pre-consultation with the fire department, and that the Fire Smart Homeowners Manual be consulted to understand how treatments to the property influence wildfire spread. Comments were also received from Nick Colucci, the township's director of operational services, stating no objection to the application, but that there is a concern that the reduced setback may interfere with future road widenings, infrastructure improvements, or maintenance operations. Letters of support were received from Bruce Rothney and Nancy Barber, the easterly and westerly abutting property owners, stating no objection to the application. The proposed variances are summarized as shown on the screen. This table was included in the circulation materials and can be found in the agenda package. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended that the application be approved, subject to the following. 1, that the minor accessory structures in the front yard be brought into compliance with applicable zoning provisions as required or removed. 2, that the propane tank on the road allowance associated with Hamills Point Road be relocated onto the subject property in compliance with zoning requirements or removed. And 3, that a satisfactory site plan agreement be entered into and registered on title, along with securities for retention of existing vegetation and plantings to retain and revegetate the shoreline buffer. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee.
Thank you very much, Ms. Beamish. Is the applicant or applicant's agent here wish to speak on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. Good morning, members of the committee. and township staff. My name is Sam Soya. I'm a senior planner with Tulloch at 80 Main Street West in Huntsville, postal code P1H1W9, and I'm representing the applicants for this application. I'd like to thank township staff for their review of the application, for their detailed description of it in their report, and for the supportive recommendation. The subject property is generally very well vegetated, but the odd shape of it, due to the Hamills Point Road allowance, results in certain constraints to lot depth. The location of the proposed sleeping cabin has been chosen to promote compatibility between neighbors and to also ensure that the sleeping cabin will be sufficiently set back from the shoreline to provide appropriate room for buffering. Visual buffering is going to be provided by the boathouse and existing trees, and the applicants are very willing to make further improvements to the shoreline buffer through the site plan control process. Since the applicants purchased the property in 2019, they have planted over 24 trees and various shrubs, many of which have been quickly maturing. And they are now working with a local landscaper to create a planting plan to achieve some additional improvements. With regards to the requested setbacks from the rear lot line, the proposed sleeping cabin allows, or the location allows for construction and long-term maintenance of the sleeping cabin to occur without impacting the township's road allowance. We did pre-consult with public works staff to discuss the typical concerns that could arise when development is close to a road allowance. In this case, it's important to consider that the existing legal non-complying dwelling is located about 50 feet from the roadbed, and now the proposed sleeping cabin would be about 60 feet from the traveled roadbed. Another important consideration is that Hamills Point Road is a dead-end road that provides access to only a further 8 waterfront residential properties. Therefore, traffic volumes are very limited, and it would appear that there's no real possibility for increases. Therefore, any sort of realignment of the roadbed or any intensive utility installations along the road allowance would appear to be very unlikely. With regards to the conditions of approval that have been recommended by township staff, the applicants have no concerns with relocating their propane tank off of the road allowance and onto their own property, compliance with zoning requirements. Similarly, there's no concerns with the condition with regards to temporary storage tent. Now, as is shown in the photo on page 102 of today's agenda package, the property also contains a play set, which involves 2 components, a playhouse and a small climber with an attached swing set, which provides the applicant's grandchildren with a place to play outside. The applicants would therefore ultimately like to keep the play set until their grandchildren have outgrown it in a couple of years. This play set is quite small. It's sized for very young children and is not permanently affixed to the ground, and it is well buffered from the lake. While we were hopeful that the play set would not be viewed as something that contributes to lot coverage, the roof of the playhouse and the roof of the portion of the climber measures 33¼ square feet, which when added to the coverage of the dwelling, boathouse, and sleeping cabin does result in a lot coverage of 11.1%. If the roofs of the play set measured only 6 square feet less, the percentage would actually be 11%. So firstly, we would request that the play set be considered as something that does not contribute to lot coverage. However, if the play set is going to be viewed as something that contributes, then the applicants would like to request that the lot coverage variance be very slightly adjusted to permit 11.1%. While I understand that the official plan policies related to lot coverage are strictly applied, the implementation section does provide some flexibility when it comes to numerical quantities in the official plan when minor variances are requested. It seems that this may be a situation that would potentially qualify. However, if staff and committee do not agree, we would request an alternative, that being that only the removal of the playhouse be required. The roof of the climber has an area of only 21 square feet, and we would then like to request a variance of 274 square feet instead of 273 square feet, which would result in a lot coverage of 11% instead of the 10.9% that was circulated. So in summary, the variances have been requested to permit a sleeping cabin in a location that will promote compatibility between neighboring properties. It will be well buffered from the lake, and it will not interfere with the function of Hamills Point Road. I would agree with the staff that the application satisfies the 4 tests of a minor variance, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. And please note that the applicant is also attending today and is available should there be any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You just made your 5 minutes. Thank you. Is there anyone else here wishing support of this application? Anyone in opposition to this application? Questions from the members? Yes, Member Bridgman.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. Just if I could ask staff their feelings on Mr. Soya's suggestion that one of the playhouses come down, so we're back to the 11% coverage. I would just like to hear staff's comment on that.
Yes, Mr. Sharp.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members of committee. Obviously staff struggled with the particular aspect of this application. We certainly don't have anything about, against children. I just wanted to make that clear, but at the same time, we don't necessarily plan for people either. So we're sort of caught in the middle here. We can appreciate where the applicant is coming from, but at the same time, we also see these structures as structures. They are roofed. If we're talking about a storage shed, we wouldn't be having this conversation. With that being said, if committee wants to amend its resolution to increase the amount of lot coverage that's permitted on the lot in order to allow these structures to remain, or some combination of these structures to remain, that certainly can be done. Thank you.
Yes.
Through you, Chair. Thank you. I did just want to caveat that it appears that these structures may be within the front yard setback as well. So if committee is considering keeping the structures in place, there is that component to consider as well. That relief.
They could be moved to a different location.
Through you, Chair. We would look to the agent to confirm what this front yard setback is of those structures. But if committee is interested in keeping those structures there, we would either need to look at a variance for a relief from the front yard setback if they are indeed within the front yard setback, or that the structures be relocated to be outside of that setback.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Yes.
I would be willing to go up to 11.1% personally if we're allowed, provided on the condition that these playhouses are shared with beavers, black bears, bunnies, and squirrels.
Okay. Anyone else?
Chair
Yes.
Edwards?
Yes, go ahead.
Is it not possible to move these back far enough that for the whole property we're under 11% if they're moved?
I'll ask Mr. Soya.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. No, the entire property is within 200 feet of the shoreline, so it's not that they could be moved outside of that. There's not really much space, like the area chosen for these structures has been chosen because it's one of the only level locations on the property, and so therefore it would be difficult to move it into a different location. I understand staff's question for the setback. I'm just actually confirming the setback here. I should have a number for staff should they like to have that number in about a minute. If I might just jump in, I do have a number for the setback, and it's currently the nearest structure or the nearest portion of the playset is 40 feet from the front lot line, from the high water mark.
Okay, Mr. Sawyer, I'm looking at page 105, where you were going to put the original bunkie, and that, could it be moved back that far? Obviously, that was leveled, or it could be leveled out.
That location is actually quite steep. That was one of the considerations for not choosing that location. There's a sort of where the dwelling sits, and then to that eastern side of it, it's sort of the dwelling. The dwelling is like a walkout basement, and so it's conducive to that slope, and so that's the concern with that setback in that location. I think like the consideration here is, leaving it where it is, it would not require any further site alteration. It is quite well buffered where it is, and it's there is going to be additional plantings as well. I would suggest that it is appropriate to keep it where it is, and it is going to be removed. That is the intention of the applicants once the grandchildren have outgrown it. They've told me that that'll be might be another couple of years, but that's the information they've provided me with. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Sharp.
Yes, Mr. Sharp.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Again, I appreciate where the applicant and the agent are coming from. I just wanted to point out in this instance, there has been a request for lot coverage circulated. So if committee was wanting to amend the resolution for that lot coverage request to allow a bit more, I think that would be one consideration. However, wouldn't be staff's typical approach to recommend that additional variances be included in your resolution that weren't otherwise circulated to the public, which would be the case in terms of a front yard setback. So it would be, again, if you wanted to increase the coverage, that would be would certainly be within your prerogative to do that. However, it would need to be in my opinion and recommendation would need to be paired with a condition requiring the relocation of those structures in compliance with the front yard setback. Thank you.
Okay. I'm looking to what committee, any thoughts, any comments on this? Yes.
My only comment is I'm okay with with staff's recommendation, as long as we're committee or is not setting a precedent that staff doesn't believe committee should set. So.
Yes, Member Bridgman.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. Thank you, Mr. Sharp, for your comments. You brought me back to what planning is. It's what's on, to me, it's what's on the paper. It's not about the usage. It's a roofed structure. These are roof structures, and they're part of our bylaws. So I do not want to make an exception for these two units, and I don't want to set that precedent. So I will go with staff's recommendation.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? Okay. Moved by member Brown, second by member Stokes. Be it resolved that minor variance application A 7724 James and Langley to construct a two-story sleeping cabin and hereby approved with the following variance being granted. 1, to permit a lot coverage of 3,157 square feet or 10.9% over the entire lands. 2, to permit a front yard setback of 53 feet for a sleeping cabin. 3, to permit a rear yard setback of 5 feet for a sleeping cabin. 4, to permit a setback of 5 feet from the lot line abutting a street for a sleeping cabin. And 5, to permit a rear yard setback of 11.9 feet for stairs and a landing. And 6, to permit a setback of 11.9 feet from a lot line abutting a street for stairs and a landing. These variances are granted on shown on a plan attached to notice of decision. They're hereby subject to the following conditions. 1, that a minor accessory structure, storage tents and playset in the front yard be brought into compliance with applicable zoning provisions as required or removed. That a propane tank at road allowance associated with Hamills Point Road be relocated onto the subject property in compliance with the zoning requirements or removed. And 3, that a satisfactory site plan agreement be entered into, registered on title, along with securities for retention of existing vegetation and planting to remain and revegetate the shoreline buffer. This approval shall remain in effect for 3 years from the date of decision. Any questions or comments on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried. The next one is A7824, and that's Ms. Beamish.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. The next application to be heard is minor variance application A 7824 in the name of PANAGIOTAKOPOULOS. The subject lands are known municipally as 1043 Wynanne Drive. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted site plan on page 139 of the agenda package. The purpose of the application is to construct an accessory sleeping cabin, sauna, and dock before the establishment of a main building. Notice of this public hearing under the Planning Act was circulated 12 days in advance of this meeting, and 3 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Douglas Holland, the Township's Fire Prevention Officer, noting the calculated fire response time and recommending that the Fire Smart Homeowner's Manual be consulted to understand how treatments to the property influence wildfire spread. Comments were also received from Nick Snyder, the Township's Chief Building Official, stating no objection to the application, but noting that building permits have been issued for a dwelling and sewage system on the property, and a sewage permit amendment may be required. Comments were also received from Nick Colucci, the Township's Director of Operational Services, stating that the proponent should be required to provide a letter of credit or cash deposit to cover the cost of demolition should the main structure not be constructed within 1 year. A sediment and erosion control plan should be provided for the Phase 1 work and can be provided at the time of a building permit. If the bunkie is to be serviced for a washroom, then the septic and tile bed will need to be constructed as part of Phase 1. The washroom can be serviced by the existing septic permit and should be constructed in advance of occupancy for the bunkie. If not, then temporary washroom facilities will need to be provided with evidence of a yearly contract. The proposed variances are summarized as shown on the screen. This table was included in the circulation materials and can be found in the agenda package. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended that the application be denied. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee.
Thank you very much, Ms. Beamish. Is the agent here or owner? No? Other questions from the members? Or anyone in opposition to this application? Okay. Questions from the members? Yes. Yes, Member Bridgman.
Thank you, Chair Edward. I'm just curious more than anything else. I see a dock has been constructed without a permit. And then I see the assessment for the fishing. It's just procedural to me. So in this case, had there been a request for to build a dock, would there had to have been a habitat study done? Is that part of the process in the building permit? I'm just curious, actually.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you, Chair, through you. The applicants would have had obligations under the Fisheries Act. Typically, what would be required to be done is they'd have to get onto the Department of Fisheries and Oceans website and follow a flow chart to determine whether the dock proposal required a review by the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, or the DFO in short. And if it did, they'd have to send that request for review to the DFO. The DFO would review it and get back to them, typically with a letter of advice with respect to how to proceed. However, if the flow chart resulted in a situation where they didn't need to contact a DFO, I believe all they would have to do is notify the DFO that they were intending on doing the work and proceed with applying for a building permit. So I can't speak to whether the applicants followed through on their obligations under the Fisheries Act. If they are on the call, perhaps they can speak to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sharp.
So one
Is there
more,
any-
Chair Edwards, is that a floating dock? It was hard to tell by the picture.
Yes,
Through you, Chair, I believe it was a floating dock, but I am not an expert on dock construction, so unfortunately I can't confirm.
okay, thank you. Okay, are there any other questions or comments? I will ask staff, they had recommended denial. Is this what the committee are favoring? Yes, okay. Thank you. Moved by Member Stokes, second by Member Grogan Green, be resolved that minor variance application A 7820 to construct an accessory buildings and structures, sleeping cabin, sauna, and dock prior to the establishment of a main building dwelling is hereby denied. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That's carried. The next one is A 8024 Porter, and that is Ms. Miller.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. The next application to be heard is minor variance application A-8024 in the name of Porter. The subject lands are known municipally as 2045 Muskoka Road 118 West, unit number 34. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted site plan on page 157 of the agenda package. The purpose of the application is to construct a new dock and single-story boathouse, to recognize an as-built sun deck attached to a sauna, and to construct a sleeping cabin. Notice of this public hearing under the Planning Act was circulated 13 days in advance of this meeting, and 3 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Nick Colucci, the township's manager of public works, who stated his objection, noting 75% of the natural shoreline be maintained. Staff note that the report recommends a condition that the applicant submit a site plan application to revegetate the shoreline buffer should the variances be approved. Nick Snyder, the township's chief building official, stated no objection to the application. Comments were also received from Douglas Holland, the township's fire prevention officer, noting the calculated fire response time and recommending that the Fire Smart Homeowner Manual be consulted to understand how treatments to the property influence wildfire spread. The proposed variances are summarized as shown on the screen. This table was included in the circulation materials and can be found in the agenda package. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended that the application be approved subject to the following conditions. That a satisfactory site plan agreement be entered into and registered on title along with securities for retention of vegetation and plantings to retain and revegetate the shoreline buffer. And 2, that the final site plan agreement include the following provision. The owner further agrees that the sauna is permitted in the location shown in Schedule B and shall not be removed from the sun deck on which it currently stands unless the sun deck is relocated in compliance with the applicable zone provisions. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mello. Is the applicant's agent here?
Terry Ledger, 167 Medora Street, P0B1J0. I am the agent for the applicant. Basically a rebuild of the dock and boathouse. And even though we're asking for a more dock width, we're actually decreasing the dock width by about 20 feet and away from the adjacent property. Also removing the upper sun deck on the boathouse. So just a single story with a roof. And the sauna, yes, the deck on the sauna is basically the foundation holding up the sauna. So we're fine with all the conditions and I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in support of this application? In opposition to this application? Questions from the members? Yes. Member Stokes?
I'd just like to better understand how staff's recommendation takes into account the objection of Public Works. That all new construction should meet the zoning requirements to ensure that 75% of the natural shoreline is maintained.
Through you, Chair Edwards. Thank you for your question, Member Stokes. The condition that staff are recommending for this approval is that site plan agreement be entered into and registered on title, along with securities for retention of the existing vegetation on the property, but also for plantings to significantly improve the existing vegetative buffer. Yes, so hopefully that helps clarify for that.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to make it clear that that was the case. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Moved by Member Bridgman, second by Member Brown. Be it resolved that minor variance application E8024 Porter to demolish a dock and single-story boathouse to construct a new dock and single-story boathouse to recognize an as-built sun deck attached to a sauna and to construct a sleeping cabin is hereby approved with the following variance being granted. 1, to permit a cumulative dock width of 59.5 feet, and 2, to permit a front yard setback for a sun deck to be 16 feet. These variances are granted as shown on the plan attached to the notice of decision and are subject to the following conditions. 1, that a satisfactory site plan agreement be entered into and registered on title along with securities for retention of vegetation and planning to retain and revegetate the shoreline buffer. And 2, that the final site plan agreement include the following provisions. The owner further agrees that the sauna is permitted in the location shown in Schedule B and shall not be removed from the sun deck on which it is currently stands unless the sun deck is relocated in compliance with the applicable zoning provisions. This approval shall remain in effect for 3 years from the date of decision. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That's carried. And the next application is A8124 Oakley. That is Ms. Beamish.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. The next application to be heard is minor variance application A8124 in the name of Oatley. The subject lands are known municipally as 234 Jean Marie Road, Unit 2. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted site plan on page 172 of the agenda package. The purpose and effect of the application is to recognize an as-built generator and propane tanks. Notice of this public hearing under the Planning Act was circulated 12 days in advance of this meeting, and 3 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Nick Colucci, the Township's Director of Operational Services, stating no objection to the application. Comments were also received from Nick Snyder, the Township's Chief Building Official, stating no objection to the application and that it should be ensured that the propane tank setbacks are compliant with TSSA regulations. Comments were also received from Douglas Holland, the Township's Fire Prevention Officer, stating the calculated fire response times and that the Fire Smart Homeowners Manual should be consulted to understand how treatments to the property influence wildfire spread. The proposed variances are summarized as shown on the screen. This table was included in the circulation materials and can be found in the agenda package. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended that the application be approved subject to the following: that confirmation be received that the locations of the propane tanks are compliant with the requirements of the Technical Standards and Safety Authority. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee.
Thank you very much, Ms. Beamish. Is the applicant or applicant's agent here wishing to speak on this?
Yes, Chair Edwards, good morning. Stephen Fauner, Northern Vision Planning Limited, 109 Meadow Heights Drive, Bracebridge, Ontario, P1L1A4. And I'm here representing Roger Oatley in this particular application. And I was in front of committee not too long ago, and that's what's precipitated this is during the review of the site plan for the garage that was approved by committee, it was found that these structures were located too close to the rear lot line. So we looked at alternatives in terms of possibly moving them. Can't really remove them because this is a source of heat and a source of hydro for the property. So we felt it best to do and make a minor variance application. So I would like to thank staff for their positive report, and I'm glad they got out to the property once again to have a look. I do have a PowerPoint presentation. I will get through that quickly. Okay, well, thank you very much. You can go to the next slide. And I think we know what the application is about anyways. Generator and 2 propane tanks are too close to the rear lot line. One's 5 feet and one's, well, we'll say 7.5 feet. Next. And this is a copy of the site plan, which I know was in the notice. The yellow building is the proposed garage. We did use the same site plan, and we did put on there accurately the propane tanks and the generator. That these setbacks are confirmed by surveyor. Next. And this is just a close-up of the of those particular structures, if you will. These were done, it's one of those situations, again, it was a previous owner, and unfortunately the new owner ends up trying to rectify the situation. Next. So these photos were taken in September of this year. So this is the driveway in with the enclosure on the left, enclosing the propane tanks. Next. And this is just to remind committee, this was the proposed location of the garage. It was at the end of the driveway there, the far end. Next. And this is the enclosure from the other side, certainly, and with the trees that are planted there, these structures cannot be seen from the lake. It's also somewhat buffered by the dwelling as well, depending on the angle. Next. And this is just showing the driveway. If we were to move to comply with the bylaw, this stamped concrete driveway would have to be removed, and trees would have to be removed as well. So it thought best to apply for the minor variance. Next. Just another shot of the enclosure. Next. And that's what's in the enclosure. So the propane tanks, obviously power panel. Next. And that's the generator, the small dark box there. It's 2 feet by 4 feet. Next. And again, the enclosure. Next. This shows the driveway in behind the enclosure for the propane tanks, and that goes to the neighbor to the east. My client did speak to the neighbor and verbally he had no objection, but of course he didn't submit anything. So I guess it's hearsay, so take it for what it's worth, but he did indicate to my client that he did not object. Next. And this is taken from the other angle, and the propane tanks are to the left, and at this time of year you can barely see them. Next. And the picture down into the enclosure from that laneway, and again at that time of year you can barely see it. Next. So in terms of planning analysis, the one thing I wanted to point out is that there's no policies related to rear yard setbacks as there are related to front yard and side yard setbacks. Rear yard setbacks, in my opinion, are very site specific. Next. And I've gone through the criteria in my report for evaluating minor variances and just wanted to note that the front yard setback is 160 feet in this case, and we're about 575 feet from the closest neighbor. Next. I mentioned moving and the impacts it would have, and that's really not an option in this case. Next. And I won't go through the 4 tests of a minor variance. I believe that it complies with that, and certainly I agree with staff and their analysis related to the 4 tests. So I thank you very much, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fawner. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in support of this application? Anyone in opposition? Questions from the members? Seeing none, I'll read the resolution. Moved by member Brown, second by member Stokes, be it resolved that minor variance application A 8124 Oakley to recognize an as-built generator and propane tanks is hereby approved with the following variance being granted. 1, to permit a rear yard setback of 7 feet from existing propane tanks, and 2, to permit a rear yard setback of 4.5 feet from an existing generator. These variants are granted as shown on a plan attached to the notice of decision, and hereby subject to the following condition: that confirmation be received that the locations of the propane are compliant with the requirements of the Technical Standards and Safety Authority. This approval shall remain in effect for 3 years from the date of decision. Any questions? Any comments? All those in favor? That's carried.
Thank you, committee, and enjoy the rest of your day.
And the next application is A 8224, and that's Ms. Pies.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. The next application to be heard is minor variance application A 8224 in the name of Zelunka. The subject lands are known municipally as 8 McMullen Drive. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted site plan and elevation drawing on pages 218 and 219 of the agenda package. The applicants propose to recognize an as-built dwelling that exceeds the maximum permitted height. Notice of this public hearing under the Planning Act was circulated 10 days in advance of this meeting, and 3 comments have been received to date. Comments were received from Nick Colucci, the Township's Director of Operational Services, and Nick Snyder, the Township's Chief Building Official, both stating no objection to the application. Comments were also received from Douglas Holland, the Township's Fire Prevention Officer, stating no objection. However, the height request exceeds all capabilities of the Muskoka Lakes Fire Department to effectively fight fire or rescue occupants in the event of an emergency. The calculated fire response time is 10 minutes and 41 seconds, and the Fire Smart Homeowners Manual should be consulted to understand how treatments to the property influence wildfire spread. The proposed variance is summarized as shown on the screen. This table was included in the circulation materials and can be found in the agenda package. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended that the application be approved. Staff have no further comments at this time, but are happy to answer any questions from committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant or applicant's agent here wish to speak on this?
Thank you very much for presenting this minor variance. Elisa Monica. My home address in Toronto is 49 Green Meadows Circle, M2J 5G6. And as mentioned in the application, it was built on the same foundation. And one of the comments was the canopy of the property from the lakeside. And the pictures that were taken recently were in the fall. And I'd just like to present to the committee the pictures. These were 2 years ago. And this is the canopy in the summer 2 years ago. And this is another one further back on the lake. So the dwelling is not really seen. And this, and in the last 2 years, no pictures were taken by me because you could barely see our home. So I just like to, elaborate on that. No, that's all. Thank you.
Will we be able to keep those photographs for the record?
Sorry?
Can we keep those photographs for the
absolutely.
record?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in support of this application? Anyone speaking in opposition to this application? Yes? Sir? Yes, you have to come forward, give your name, address, and postal code, please.
Yes, good morning. My name is Ralph McMullen, 9 McMullen Drive, POB 1JO. I'm here to oppose the height restriction on this. My family came here in the early 50s. My dad had every opportunity to buy property on all 3 lakes, but chose Silver Lake for its beauty and privacy. So I know there's been changes over the years, new buildings, new renovations, so on, but all abided by the bylaw, the height restriction of 35 feet. So when this construction was going on, they were notified and the builder was told by numerous people down here that you're overbuilding. The bylaw says 35 feet, but as you can see, they went ahead and did it anyway. So I think this is an open and shut case. How can you, 8 inches, I can see yes being here, but 8 feet? Please, it looks like going up like Rosso when you make the turn, there's the big resort. That's kind of what you're looking at on Silver Lake. You look at any angle and all this big, huge monstrosity sticks up there like it's a resort. I think it's an open and shut case. 8 feet is way too much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? I'll let the owner have a rebuttal, and then we're going to vote on this. Go ahead.
When you drive to our place, you go down McMullen Drive, and then you go up a large hill up a driveway, and it's totally obscured from McMullen Drive, our home. You cannot see it at all. You can see it from the lake, and as I presented the pictures, it's barely noticeable at this point in time. And as the years go on, it'll be less noticeable. The trees are covering most of the leaves are covering most of the dwelling. I had not heard anything about the dwelling size. As in the diagrams, they were below 35 feet on the ground level. The only reason that it goes deep and high is because we're on bedrock. The bedrock structure is the same as it was on our previous dwelling. As I said, we built on the same, what's it called? The same the same formation. And our old dwelling also had the same incline. Underneath is bedrock. And the only way of changing anything was to blast everything out. And that wasn't even a consideration. We just did it according to the 35 feet, and the rest just is due to the elevation of about 40% incline gradient. Okay, and we have no dwelling underneath. It's all rock and storage.
Further to Mr. McMullen's comment, it does say in the staff report that it appears it was an oversight, the height, as opposed to something that was maliciously done. And there's also two options given for relief. Are those the only two options that would be available to the homeowner?
Through you, Chair. Maybe if you could just clarify the two options with respect to the relief. I believe I know what you're speaking to, but just to make sure.
Sure. On page 208, it states two options were provided to the property owner. One, bring in fill to adjust the grade, or
Right.
two, apply for planning relief to recognize the as-built dwelling. It was noted that the
No.
applicant bringing in fill to adjust the grade would require significant site alteration and would not be a desirable option. Thus, the minor variance application was submitted.
Yes.
Yeah, through you, Chair. So there's a couple of considerations here. First, the height as measured by the zoning bylaw is required to be measured from the lowest finished ground surface to the highest peak of roof. And the height request of 43 feet is only over one portion, over one corner of the building. The remaining portion of the building complies because of the way that the grade runs on the land. And further to that, the township's site alteration bylaw would actually allow the placement of fill within 15 feet of a building for which a building permit has been issued. So technically speaking, the other option, aside from submitting this minor variance application that's in front of you today, the other option to the applicant would have been to raise the grade in order to bring it in compliance. And I think staff are of the opinion that you know, the impact of that would be far greater than what's in front of you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Moved by member Bridgman, second by member Grogan Green, be it resolved that minor variance application A8224 Zelenska to recognize an as-built dwelling is hereby approved with the following variance being granted. One, to permit a maximum dwelling height of 43 feet. This variance is granted as shown on a plan attached to the notice of decision. This approval shall remain in effect from 3 years from the date of decision. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That's carried. And the last application is A6124. And that is for Cheney and McMelcom.
Thank you, Chair Edwards. The next application to be heard is minor variance application A6124 in the name of Fortin and McCallum. This application is returning. It was adjourned by committee in October to provide additional time for the Wata Mohawks and Chippewas of Rama to consider the application and provide comments. The subject lands are known municipally as 13 Stephen Road. I would direct committee's attention to the submitted site plan on page 227 of the agenda package. The purpose of the application is to relocate an existing land-based dwelling, construct a dock addition, and construct a one-story addition with a rooftop sundeck to a two-story boathouse containing an upper level dwelling. Staff have followed up with the Wata Mohawks and Chippewas of Rama requesting confirmation of their intent to submit comments regarding the application. However, a response has not been received at this time from either party. The proposed variances are summarized as shown on the screen. This table was included in the circulation materials and can be found in the agenda package. Staff have prepared a detailed report for committee's consideration and have recommended that the application be approved subject to the following. One, that the dwelling labeled as dwelling 3 on the site plan submitted May 2024 be relocated as depicted on the site plan attached to the notice of decision. And two, that no subsequent dock additions be permitted unless dock width is brought into compliance with the applicable zoning provisions. This condition shall extend beyond the 3-year expiry of this approval. Staff have no further comments at this time and are happy to answer any questions from committee.
Thank you very much. See applicant or applicant's agent here wishing to speak on this.
I'll be quick because I know, I think this is on. Alistair McCallum, being here before, 13 Stephen Road, P0B 1J0. I'm just here to support the planner's recommendations and answer any questions that anyone has. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone that wishes to speak in support of this application? Anyone in opposition to this application? Questions from the members? Seeing none. Moved by member Grogan Green, second by member Brown. Be it resolved that minor variance application A 6124 Fortini and McMalcolm to relocate an existing land-based dwelling to construct a one-story boathouse addition with a rooftop sun deck to an existing two-story boathouse containing an upper-level dwelling and to construct a dock addition is hereby approved with the following variance being granted. One, to relocate one of the four existing dwellings on the lot to permit a maximum lot coverage of 3,088 square feet, 10.5% within 200 feet of the high water mark. 3, to commit a dock addition to be set back 11 feet at the closest point from the northeasterly side lot line projection. 4, to permit a single-story boathouse addition with a rooftop sun deck to be set back 14.5 feet at the closest point from the northeasterly side of the lot line projection. And 5, to permit a cumulative second-story boathouse width of 32.2 feet. These variances are granted as shown on a plan attached to the notice of decision and are subject to the following conditions. 1, that the dwelling be labeled as dwelling number 3 on the submitted site plan dated May 2024 be located as depicted on the site plan attached to the notice of decision. And 2, that no subsequent dock additions be permitted unless dock width is brought into compliance with the applicable zoning provisions. This condition shall be extended beyond the 3-year date of the expiry of this approval. This approval shall remain in effect for 3 years from the date of decision. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That's carried. Would someone get Sean back in, please? I have one other resolution. Moved by member Grogan Green, second by member Bridgman. Be it resolved that the meeting hereby adjourns at 10:18 a.m. All those in favor? Thank you very much for making this a very speedy meeting, so we don't hold everybody up. Thank you very much. We'll see you next month.